This is Julia Thompson, author of the First Year Teacher Survival Guide, and you're listening to the New Teacher Podcast.
The New Teacher Podcast. Get inspired. If you're a new teacher interested in hearing about the latest tips and tricks to inspire you in the classroom, you've come to the right place. The New Teacher Podcast features interviews with award-winning classroom teachers, the latest authors, and educational leaders recognized for their proven teaching techniques and strategies. Hear the stories of their success and failure. To listen to past episodes, view show notes, or to contact us, please visit our website at newteacher.org. Now here's your host, Anthony Arno.
Hello and welcome to the New Teacher Podcast, Episode 1. I'm your host, Anthony Arno. Now we're officially up and running this week with our very first episode. And if you're one of the 35,000 teachers attending the New Jersey Teachers Convention in Atlantic City this week, please come by and visit us. We're at booth number 1225, right next to the New Jersey Future Educators Association. I was very surprised to learn that we have some listeners who are not even out of high school yet, but may be interested in a teaching career. If that's you, you're going to love today's show with Julia Thompson. Please remember that we'll be giving away a signed copy of Julia's book, The First Year Teacher's Survival Guide, to a random listener who leaves us a review in iTunes anytime during the month of November 2015. I would love to hear from you and maybe read your comments on the next show. Julia Thompson has been a classroom teacher for over 35 years and has written the First Year Teacher's Survival Guide. Most recently, in 2015, Julia was nominated for a BAMI Award. Julia, welcome to the New Teacher Podcast.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us about the nomination for the BAMI Award. What exactly are the BAMIs for those who might not be familiar with it?
The BAMIs are awards issued by the American Education Academy of Arts and Science. And it's for, and I'm really happy about this, it's for people who promote the good in education. It isn't just people who are online being snarky, but it's people who try to promote good things about education, to spread the word that there's a lot of good going on in schools today. And so for me, it was just a huge honor to be nominated, and I was really pleased by that.
Well, that's great. You must be very proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
Julia, let's go back a little bit. Tell us a personal story about a teacher that might have inspired you as a student, and what do you remember the most about them?
Well, I know this is going to sound just dreadful, and even now, looking back on my younger days, I don't think I had very good teachers until I got to college. You know, it wasn't just the time I grew up in, but I just think that some of my teachers could have cared less about their students in general, and definitely not about me. So I'll tell you that when I went to college, though, I met amazing professors who saw me as a person and who really inspired me to think and to want to be a good student for them. And in particular, I had a Shakespeare. I'm an English teacher. I had a Shakespeare professor named Dr. Caroline Chermside, and when she talked about Shakespeare, it was like she knew him. And it was just wonderful. She made the literature alive, and she made me want to be the best possible student I could be. And I'm really glad that in my lifetime, I've taught Shakespeare for many years now. And when I do, I always think about her. And once I wrote her a letter and was able to tell her how much, I'm glad I did that, how much it had meant to me to be able to share her love of the literature of Shakespeare in that period with my students throughout the years. And so she really inspired me to be the best possible teacher I could be now, and then as a student to be the best possible college student I could be for her.
And did she reply back to you when you wrote her that letter?
Yes, she did. It was really neat. At the time when I wrote her, she was in her middle 80s. And to be able to give back to her some of the joy that she had given me. So we had a correspondence for a few years. And do you know that, this is very touching to me, that when she died, my letter was read at her funeral.
Oh, how sweet.
And so how nice to know that I could give to her just a small measure of the pleasure she has given to me.
That's a great story.
Thank you.
Do you remember the moment you decided that you wanted to become a teacher?
Oh, absolutely. Crystal clear. I was never one of those people who played school or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I didn't really enjoy school much when I was little. So I became a teacher because I wanted to be a college professor. And so I did student teaching just as a matter of, kind of filling in the time until I could become a college teacher. And so the first day I ever was observed as a student teacher, I was writing on the board, and I was very proud of myself, and I had a great little outfit, I must say. And I was writing on the board, and I turned around to say something to the class, and the observer, my student teacher observer, was in the back of the room, and I was so nervous. And I looked down at my desk, and there was a little note that a student had put there, and it said, "Your pants are unzipped."
Oh, no.
And so I have thought often about the grace of children, how I was, I just zipped up my pants and kept going. But a kid knew what I was going through and helped me. And, I went, this is a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. Student teaching was. And then later I did teach at Virginia Tech, and I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as I did working with younger kids. And so I think every year I think about, because this is year number 39 for me.
Wow.
And every year I think about, why do I do this? And it's because of, every year it's a fresh start for kids. It's a fresh start for me. There's so much magic about being a teacher. It's not just the tough drudgery of grading papers, but you really do get to have that time with kids, and that's a lot of fun.
That's great. Julia, what prompted you to write the First Year Teacher's Survival Guide?
Honestly, I was standing at the photocopier, and you know how everybody wants the copier first thing in the morning, and if you don't get it, you're just ready to stab the person in front of you?
Yes.
So I was standing there watching a first-year teacher just fiddle around with papers very slowly and just eating up everyone's time, not aware that there was a huge line of really mad teachers forming behind her. And I thought, she didn't even know the practical stuff about being a teacher. And then I remember when I got out of my education courses, I knew all my content, but I didn't know the practical stuff. I didn't even know how to keep a grade book. And so I thought, I could do this. Let me show a new teacher what to do. And I'm so fortunate that I've been able to write about the practical daily concerns that new teachers go through, so they can translate the theories that we learn in college, they can translate them into like the daily routines and procedures of your class.
Right. Now, the book has been revised several times. What can you tell us about the latest revision of the book?
Well, the latest revision of the book is, it took me a year to do. I think it is, I have it right here. Let me check. It is it's 530 pages.
Wow.
Just in the book itself. And then there's almost 100, if not more than 100 pages on the disc, because it was just too thick to make it like that big. It's everything I could distill about teaching.
So tell our listeners, what is on the disc?
The disc is stuff like what you do when you have to be absent and there's a sub. How do you retransfer a sub? Or there's stuff like what to do, just in general, what to do about like relieving stress. So there's all kinds of stuff that I tried to fit in there.
Julia has been kind enough to give us a signed copy that we're going to be giving away. That's a signed copy of the First Year Teacher's Survival Guide to a random listener if you leave us a review within 30 days of this podcast. What is one thing a new teacher can do tomorrow in their classroom to become more of an effective teacher?
Honestly, this is what I do. I keep a binder of fun activities for my students, quick little games, because if you run out of time, you need a quick refresher about what to do. And so I have a binder of games and websites and strategies and activities. And so if I find that my class is getting dull, my students are getting restless, and I need a plan B or maybe a plan C or maybe a plan D, I have that binder ready to go. So if I were a new teacher, I would do just like I'm doing right I've done, and I would go ahead and search online, search fun activities for class, icebreakers, how to make class interesting for students. And if you have those for students are ready to go, when you get desperate, you come up with something fun to do with kids.
Right. Now, your most popular book is The First Year Teacher's Survival Guide. What other books have you written?
The first book I wrote, I was teaching in an inner city school, and you can tell I have a little voice. I'm not a very big person. I'm pretty friendly. I have a smiley face. And I wrote a book called the Discipline Survival Guide for the Secondary Teacher, because my students, even in a really tough urban school, behaved. And so I thought, if I can show people how to do this, if I can do it, anybody could do it. So that book came out, was a bestseller, which created the room and for my publisher to ask me to write the First Year Teacher Survival Guide. And then I have a little checklist book that's kind of a companion for the Survival Guide. And then I have for professional development leaders, there's a course, a DVD type course that was really fun to do. We filmed it at a school in Grand Rapids, Michigan. That where people tend to believe that what I say, Julia Thompson says, is the truth about education. So that was fun. And then just this summer, I'm really happy to announce that at KDS, Knowledge Delivery Systems, has just finished a course that we filmed in Phoenix, where we work with new teachers, trying to help new teachers. And usually this is to augment the professional development that school districts do to help new teachers become effective classroom leaders. And that was really a lot of fun to do.
Okay. You're listening to the New Teacher Podcast, and our guest today is Julia Thompson, author of The First Year Teacher's Survival Guide. Julia, every year at the end of the summer, teachers get excited about sending a welcome letter to their students. What type of advice would you give to a new teacher with regard to what they should include in that welcoming letter to their students for the first time?
You know, that's a really terrific question. First of all, the letter should not be too long, and you should make sure that absolutely every word in it is spelled correctly, and you use the absolute best writing style that you can. But the letter should be welcoming. It should stress all the fun things that you're going to do that year, what kids will be able to do at the end of the year. And so you want kids to look forward to things and say, well, in the second semester we will do this. In the first semester we will do this. By the end of the year, here's what you'll be able to do. And so I would be upbeat and personal. I think just to try to encourage kids about the course itself. I would not, in that welcoming letter, put down rules and expectations, because that can come after you know kids. And I also would not, what I would not do would be to put too much about myself in there. I would just say, I'm your teacher. I'm looking forward to meeting you. If you want to say I'm a recent graduate of such and such a school, something like that, you could. But I wouldn't focus on the fact that you have 2 cats and a boyfriend or anything like that. I'd focus on the course and how you want them to enjoy it. Always focus outward. Have the children excited about the class. Even older kids would be excited about a class. How will that class benefit them?
So if you're a new teacher sending out a letter, map out what you plan to do for the entire year and get your students excited about this is where we are now, and by the end of the year, this is where we're going to be. Create some excitement with those kids.
Absolutely. That's a great recap.
In your book, you have a section called Troubleshooting 20 Common Problems. What are some of the more common problems that a new teacher might face in the classroom, and what are your suggestions to help them deal with those problems?
I think the most common problem that a lot of us deal with, a lot of the problems that we deal with in general, like disrespect, talking back, those sorts of issues, deal with the fact that students, if we are nervous and not prepared, students see that. And it's like kind of like blood in the water is very sharp. They can smell or be aware that we are not at our best. And so I think that to stop those sort of regular classroom misbehaviors, class clowns, disrespect, talking out, not being prepared for class, those things, that we need to present ourselves as professionals, completely professionals, in charge of the class, confident, even if you don't feel confident, act confident, and best of all, Anthony, we need to have the best lesson plan possible, because the surest way to avoid classroom problems is to have the best possible lesson plan so that kids can be engaged and want to do their work.
Right. Through your 35 years, actually you said it was 38 years, is that correct?
39, just beginning 39.
Wow.
I
Cool
know.
beans. What was one of the biggest mistakes you might have made as a classroom teacher, and what did you learn from that mistake?
I think that the biggest mistake I ever made as a teacher is when I was a new teacher. And I guess I was so intimidated by the fact that my students were large and rowdy and my classes were large and rowdy that I tried to out-mean them. I tried to be tough. I tried to be a strict disciplinarian. And I didn't realize that if I build that positive relationship with kids and with a class and help them build relationships with each other and connect them to the school, that I could win them over by being softer. I could win them over through the work. I could win them over by making them want to do well instead of just imposing my will on them. And so I think it's easy to impose your will and be martial law, but it's far, far better to win students over, to always say, come over to the good side.
Right.
Join us over here.
Absolutely. What was one of your proudest moments as a classroom teacher?
Oh, gosh. For me, it's always when kids come back and they say, especially when it was a naughty child, and they'll say, I so appreciate what you did. But I will honestly tell you this. The proudest moment I will ever have as a teacher, the best moment I ever had as a teacher, is I was asked to be the graduation speaker for a class.
Wow.
They could have chosen anybody, and they chose me. And talk about pressure. Oh, my gosh, I did not want to let this class down. That was an amazing event for me.
That's a tremendous honor.
It is. It isn't the Teacher of the Year thing where your peers sometimes recognize you, but for me to have students select me, oh my gosh, I will live on that forever.
How can a new teacher establish and maintain good communication skills with the parents of their students?
Well, I think that if you think about what parents want, they want a teacher who cares about their child. They want a teacher who communicates with them. Even when it doesn't seem like they want that, they do. And they want transparency. And they want you to be fair, and they want you to listen to them. And so have a class webpage, have a class website, create Twitter, do Remind, reach out in a variety of ways to parents. Send home positive notes, make those positive phone calls so that when you have to call home because something didn't go well, but that's sort of a negative, unpleasant phone call, you've established a positive relationship. And it's up to us to reach out to make that bridge to them. And so I think that is entirely up to us, and it can be done. Just be transparent and think of a variety of ways to do it and do it often.
Now, you've been in the classroom 39 years, almost 40 years. How was it adjusting to the changes that you've seen, especially with an online presence and social media?
I think one thing that helps me is that I am not afraid to ask for help. And I think all teachers need to do that. So if I don't know how to do something, I'll ask a child, how do you do this? I am terrible with hardware. I'm pretty good with software. But I cannot plug in my LCD projector 3 days in a row correctly. I don't need to, because I'll turn to a child and say, can you do this for me? Or can you show me how to do this? So I'm never afraid to ask for help. And I am interested in the advantages that technology can give us. I mean, there are disadvantages. I know, Anthony, you must get a zillion emails a day, and so do I.
Yes.
But we're constantly connected. But there's so many advantages that, I embrace technology. I wish I was better at the hardware, but, everybody has strengths and weaknesses.
So new
and I have help.
teachers, remember that you should ask for help. Don't be afraid
absolutely.
to network with both your colleagues and even your students. You'll be amazed how much today's students know regarding technology compared to when you might have been a student, and it's just changing every year, bit by bit, and it just adds up. And it can be overwhelming, but if you're willing to ask for help, that should definitely make that transition so much more easier. Julia, if a new teacher has a student who failed an assignment, a test, or a project, how do you suggest they deal with that child?
Well, first of all, I would hope that there's a previous attention paid to a policy. Has that child, you as a collaborative learning team at your school, like say you teach grade 7, have all the grade 7 teachers come up with a policy for this, because you need to work within the policy of a school or within a team. And I think most of us work in teams now. And if that doesn't work, I would suggest that a new teacher should talk to a mentor, talk to a trusted colleague, and ask advice. And then, I honestly believe this, and it never hurts to be generous. There's nothing wrong with generosity. If a child has failed something, talk to that child and say, what happened here? What went wrong? And, lots of times it could be nothing connected with school. It could be just a missed little signal along the way that set the child off on a wrong path. But I would get help from other people, and I'd get advice, and I would talk to the child. And then if at all possible, just be generous. Can you retest? Can you re-help this child learn this material? Because that's the big point, is learning the material.
Right, yes. Do you have a successful behavior management strategy that works really well in your classroom?
I never sit down.
Always on your feet. Not.
I have an activity counter, a tracker, like a Fitbit sort of a thing. Yes. I am on my feet constantly. I am walking around that room. I am monitoring. I am vigilant. I am the most with witness. I have the highest level of witness you can. It happens in my classroom. I'm aware of it. Don't sit down. Don't rest. Just be vigilant and monitor and walk around and help kids. And then if you work and are aware in your classroom, then other things will fall into place. If students can, one little guy's in the back punching somebody and you catch him, then that tends to stop everybody else from doing it.
Right. What is one internet resource that can really help a new teacher in the classroom?
Well, let me tell you two, besides your wonderful site.
Thank you.
I think a really cool place for new teachers to learn a whole lot of stuff is Twitter. I think that there's lots of really good educators on Twitter who are reaching out, sharing ideas, sharing really wonderful information, and it comes from a wide variety of sources. So I think Twitter is important, and I think that I read recently that the most widely used resource for teachers online is Pinterest. So, you can find all kinds of great information there. I know at the beginning of the school year in particular, when I'm trying to figure out how I want my classroom to look fresh this year.
Sure, bulletin board ideas, excellent idea, yes.
Absolutely, and just, neat ways to do things. And how generous that our colleagues across the world share their information online. So I would go with Pinterest and Twitter.
And what is your handle on Twitter?
I'm at Teacher Advice.
Okay, and about how many times a day would you say you find yourself on Twitter giving feedback or just entering information?
I don't really, during the summer or our times off, pretty often. But after school, but my school day is usually a 10-hour day. I'm pretty serious about it, about the hours I put in, just like all concerned teachers are. And so at home, I spend maybe half an hour on Twitter, unless I have special things that I'm working on. But I learn from Twitter. I'm constantly looking, and then lots of times I will share information that I found on Twitter with people at my school who aren't on Twitter, or I will retweet. So there's lots of just great resources out there. And in half an hour, you can really connect yourself.
What is the best thing about being a classroom teacher, Julia?
Kids. I have always enjoyed the kids, little ones, big ones, good ones, bad ones. I just love the kids. And I really enjoy being around students. This at the beginning of the school year is a tough time because they're not quite into things yet. They're still learning the rules and procedures and how to do things. But and I know you know this from your experience, how wonderful is it to watch them grow and change and figure out things? Oh my gosh, I love that feeling.
Absolutely. And you see so much during that 10-month school year period. And when they come to you in September as new students, you're kind of scratching your head, comparing them to the kids that just graduated. but it really is incredible how much they learn during that 10-month period.
And it doesn't, you would think it would be like an even flow from point A to point B, but it isn't. It's in little spurts. And so at the beginning of the year, it's sort of slow, and then you have a big spurt of like, wow, everybody caught on to this, and you feel good about it, and then you realize, gosh, now it's like going up steps.
Yes.
This level will keep going and going and going, and then, step by step you get there. Slowly but surely you will get there. That's such a great feeling.
Yes. Julia, do you have a favorite educational quote to inspire our new teachers?
I sure do, because I was probably the worst first-year teacher ever, and I would go home from school every single day, almost in tears and completely stressed. And so it dawned on me that I needed to figure out how to balance my life, because if you don't balance your life, your professional life and your personal life, you're teaching 24/7. And teaching is a career that lends itself to that, where you can be all-consuming. And so I write it on my desk, my blotter on my desk every year, and it's take your successes home, but leave your problems at school. So, go home feeling good about school. If you have things you need to do, finish your day, go back the next day. Don't just spend all your time at home worrying about school, because that's easy to do. Just take your successes home, but leave your problems at school.
That's a great quote. Take your successes home, but leave your problems at school. That's a great
trust me, Anthony, they'll still be there waiting for you tomorrow.
Yes, and especially if you're a teacher, we all know that you need the support of those at home. And at times you have to draw the line of fairness between your home life and your school life. And just like she said, take your successes home, but leave your failures at school.
Absolutely. And you have to teach yourself to do this, because you feel guilty sometimes and then you just walk away from it. But you will benefit. You will come back fresh. Lots of times I found for myself, if their problems seem to work themselves out in my head on the way to school or way home from school. But if I spend all night fretting, I get nowhere.
Right. Well, we're about to begin the final period before the bell. Are you ready, Julia?
Yes, I am.
Okay, here we go. Morning person or night owl?
Oh, I hate to admit this, but I am such a morning person. My alarm goes off at 4:40, and I am at school by 6 o'clock.
Mac or PC?
PC.
Your favorite book from your childhood?
Lamb's Tales from Childhood. I'm from Shakespeare.
Your first paying job?
I worked on the Blue Ridge Parkway at an answer desk answering questions for tourists.
It's an unexpected snow day. What are you going to do with this unexpected day off from school today?
Well, just like the first thing I would do is, after it is light enough to deal with students, and early, I send them I use the service Remind, the text service Remind. It's like Sally. And so I text my students and remind them to go back to bed, that either if they have to do work, because we've had several snow days in a row, to do their work. But if I can tell them to give them a day off, I give them a day off. A snow day is a great gift, and I want them to be able to enjoy it if they can.
And the next item on your bucket list?
Well, I'm so fortunate. I live outside of Washington, D.C., and so there's so many wonderful things to do here. But there's some of the museums, believe it or not, there's some of the museums in downtown D.C. that I haven't visited yet. Like, I've never been to National Geographic Museum or the Spy Museum, and so I definitely want to see those.
Well, there's the final bell. Julia, thank you again for joining the New Teacher Podcast. Her most popular book is The First Year Teacher's Survival Guide. It's over 500 pages, and she's agreed to give away one signed copy to anyone who leaves a review. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
I'm in several places online. And so I think that if you just were to Google Julia G. Thompson, it pops up. I work for BAM. I blog for AFT. I blog for BAM Radio. I have a blog. I have a website. I'm on Twitter. And, of course, with the books, they show up. So Julia G. Thompson.
Okay, well, thank you again, Julia, so much. You've been listening to the New Teacher Podcast.
Well, thank you.
Goodbye. Well, that's our very first show. Thank you again to Julia for taking the time to talk with me and for donating a signed copy of The First Year Teacher's Survival Guide. Our guest next week is Chuck Yarborough, who was recently named one of NPR's top 50 teachers. As a history teacher, Chuck will talk about the Tales from the Crypt, a year-long project where his students research residents buried at the local cemetery. The end result is a student reenactment alongside the graves of the deceased, where over 2,000 community members come to hear the stories of those who once lived in this southern Mississippi town. This is the New Teacher Podcast. Thank you for listening, and please stop in and say hello if you're at the New Jersey Teachers Convention this week. We're at booth 1225. If not, I would love to hear from you on iTunes.